So I recently made this dress out of this striped rib knit fabric, and I'm really loving it. You've probably been seeing these striped rib knits all over the place lately, both in ready to wear and at fabric stores. And this dress ended up so cute and cozy and comfortable for the winter. I'm going to show you today how I made it and 5 tips that you can use if you want to make a dress like this out of a striped rib knit. So let's go. But before we get to that, if you're someone who's interested in making your own clothing with more intention and joy, you're definitely in the right place here at Seamwork. So hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you can follow along with us and never miss one of our weekly videos. So for this dress, I used the Lenny pattern, which is a turtleneck dress made in a knit fabric, and you can use a wide variety of knit fabrics for this dress. I decided that I wanted more of a mini dress for mine, and one of the reasons is that the stripes are obviously very bold, and I thought something longer might be a little bit overpowering for me, so I decided to shorten it a little bit, and I'll talk about that in a second. But a few words on rib knit fabric. So rib knit fabric is all over the place right now, and I think for good reason. It's really lovely to work with and really lovely to wear, and the reason is that it's made with a combination of knit and purl stitches. So if you're a knitter, you're probably familiar with that. It's often a knit purl, so that's a 1x1 rib, or it could be knit purl purl, which would be a 2x2 rib. And depending on whether it's a 1x1, 2x2, 2x4, that'll affect the texture and the stretch of the knit. So this one, it looks like it's maybe like a 4x2, perhaps, something like that. And when you see something like that, you see these kind of wide ribs with small little indentations between them, and those are the purl stitches. So the combination of the knit and purl is what gives it that lovely stretch and recovery, and that's why you'll often see rib knits used, for example, on bands, on neck bands, on cuffs, because it has so much stretch and so much recovery, it really snaps right back into shape. So for this dress, I used the Lenny pattern, and the Lenny is a pretty form-fitting turtleneck dress. So you have this pretty wide neckband. Here, I'll unfold it for you so you can see. It's pretty long, but you can fold it over, or you can even fold it over twice if you want more of a, almost like a mock neck looking neckband. It's very cozy, very warm, and the shape is quite fitted. It's not super fitted, but it's definitely body skimming, and it's got these long sleeves that are also pretty fitted that end in these banded cuffs. And the top I'm wearing is actually also a Lenny made in a rib knit fabric. And this one I just shortened into a top, and I shortened the sleeves a little bit, and then I cut the neckline crossways just to save a little bit of fabric since I didn't have much fabric to work with. All right, so the first tip I'm going to share with you is how to get the length you want. So I shortened my dress, my Lenny dress. The Lenny is a bit longer than this. It's sort of a midi length, and I wanted it more of a mini length. So the way to do that is take your tape measure and just drape it from the back of your neck, so that little bone that sticks out right at the base of your neck, all the way down, and let it just drape till it gets to the length that you want. And that might be above your knee, it might be a little bit shorter, it might be a little bit longer. Just measure what that length is for you and find your own preference. And then you want to account for the hem. So on this dress, I did a banded hem. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in this video. But if you're going to be doing a turned hem, you might want to account for that. If you're going to do a banded hem, you want to account for that. So just add or subtract depending on what type of hem you're going to do. So now we're going to talk about cutting. So the first thing you want to do when you're about to cut is you'll fold your fabric just like normal, but you want to make sure that your stripes are matched up. So what we're going to do is fold the fabric on your cutting mat, start matching the stripes as best you can so we have wrong side out, right sides together, and then pin them in place. So just pin your stripes like this, and that is going to hold the fabric in place, and that'll ensure that you have mirrored stripes on your pattern pieces, so that everything matches up later. So for this dress, I really wanted to match the stripes at the shoulder. So what we're going to do is just draw a matched stripe on here, and you can put that wherever you want. So when you're doing a stripe matching at the shoulder, you're not going to be able to match stripes all the way to the very cap of the sleeve because you're sewing two curves together. So what you want to do is kind of figure out where it's most important for you to have the stripes match, and that's going to be where it's most visible, and it's usually about halfway up the sleeve cap. So I'm going to draw a match stripe right here, and it's going to be perpendicular to the grain line. So I'm not going to go over the whole process of stripe matching because it is quite a process, and we do have other resources all about stripe matching, so we'll put links to those below. So my third tip is if you have trouble pinning your stripes together and getting your fabric to lay flat before you cut, this can happen if your fabric is slightly off grain. This is actually what happened to me. So if you can see, I pinned all my stripes together, but then when I tried to lay my fabric out completely flat on the cutting mat, I was getting all this rippling here and sort of twisting, and I could not get the fabric to lay flat. So if you have that problem, what you can do is instead, and this takes a little bit longer, but you can cut it one ply. So that means cutting one layer at a time. So to do that, I'm going to remove these pins, open out your fabric, and just lay it flat one layer at a time. And take your pattern piece. In this case, we're going to show a sleeve. So what you're going to do is match up that match stripe line that you created and choose a stripe that you want to match it up with. So I'm going to match it with this dark blue stripe. I'm going to match it with the top of the dark blue stripe, just like that. And then when I cut the other sleeve, I'm going to flip this piece over. And again, I would match that with the top of the blue stripe. And that way you'll have two sleeves that have the same exact stripes and the same exact placement, and they'll perfectly mirror each other. All right, my fourth tip is that when you're matching up the stripes on your rib knit fabric, to hand baste them in place before you start stitching. So I'm going to match these up right sides together, pin them in place, matching up those stripes as usual. And the reason you want to hand baste this particular type of fabric is that it is a little bit shifty, and as with most knits, the serger can kind of cause things to shift a little bit more. So by hand basting it in place, you just make sure that your stripes are going to stay aligned as you stitch. So I start by pinning things in place. I use plenty of pins, and then I'm going to take a hand sewing needle and my thread, and then you just hand stitch it using just a real long stitch length, making sure that your stripes stay matched up as you go. And just stitch right at the seam allowance. So my final tip is the hem, and I chose to do a banded hem on the bottom of this dress, and you can see that it has a really nice clean look to it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why you might want to choose a banded hem. So with a rib knit fabric in particular, it is prone to stretching out a little bit along the raw edges. That's true of a lot of knit fabrics, but particularly for rib knits. And so when you do a banded hem, it encases everything and gets it kind of nice and springy. You don't have the stitches actually stretching out the fabric, but instead kind of bringing it back in. So you can see it's a nice clean look. So to do a banded hem, all you need to do is basically cut a long strip of fabric, sew the short ends together, and then you flip it with wrong sides together to form a band, and you just sew that band to your hem. So if you're making this Lenny dress, you'll see the cuffs are actually sewn in the exact same way. So you're basically just taking the exact same technique that is in the instructions for the cuffs, and you're applying it to the hem. And I did around about a 2-inch band on the bottom of this, so it added a little bit of length to the dress. So again, you want to just account for that when you're deciding how long to make your dress, how long to cut it in the first place. But I really, really like the clean look that it gives a rib knit dress. So that's something you can try. You don't have to do a banded hem, but that's a technique that can give you a really nice look. Thanks for joining us today. If you'd like to join Seamwork and become part of our private community, plus get access to hundreds of sewing patterns and dozens of sew-along classes, our YouTube subscribers get 50% off, and that's a lifetime discount when you join at seamwork.com/go/YouTube50, and we'll put a link below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to let us know by hitting the like button, and be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you get all our weekly videos. I'll see you next week.